Hello everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar today. Today's webinar is titled What's New in RadControls for WinForms. So I hope you are in the right place. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So let's first take a look at the roadmap for today. So we're going to begin with the introduction and some housekeeping. So we're going to talk a little bit about a Twitter contest that we have, as well as some existing webinars that are taking place this week. Next, we're going to take a look at the brand new stuff. We're going to specifically be talking about the pivot grid, yet we have some few other things we're going to talk about there. Then we're going to dive straight into a demo of the pivot grid and show you from file new project just exactly how this control works. Next up, we're going to take a look at some enhancements to the whole suite. So we have not only added new stuff, but we've also went back into a couple of other controls and we've added some brand new things to that. And we're also going to take a look at a couple of demos while we're in there. We are going to wrap up with some resources and some Q&A. And just one thing to keep in mind, this webinar is about 30 minutes, so we may go over just a tad. If you can't make it, that's okay. We're going to post it on tv.telerik.com, and I'm also going to be available as soon as the webinar is over for a live Q&A, but I'm going to try to keep it right around 30 minutes so I don't waste your time. So just as a brief introduction, my name is Michael Crump. I am a Microsoft MVP. I'm also a Microsoft Certified Professional Developer. I work at Telerik, obviously, as a XAML evangelist, yet I dabble in a lot of different technologies that we have, and WinForms is actually one of them. I'm on Twitter at mbcrump, so feel free to follow me. I love interacting with people after the webinars and beyond. There's always great questions that come up, and I'd like to always be available for you. There's also a couple of blogs listed here. The first blog is michaelcrump.net. This is my personal blog, and it basically lists whatever I'm kind of working on at the moment. And then the second blog listed here is blogs.telerik.com/michaelcrump. And this blog is everything Telerik specific. So usually the Telerik products that I'm working on, you will see a blog post listed there. So before we begin, I'd like to mention a Twitter contest. So we have a Twitter contest called I Love Telerik. So feel free to tweet your favorite thing about Telerik by October the 26th, which is the end of our webinar week. Use I love #Telerik in your tweet. So if you use the #Telerik, we will be able to find you. We would also love for you to follow us on Twitter at Telerik. And we're going to announce the winner in a couple of different ways. We're going to announce them via Twitter and Facebook, and we'll also send you an email on October the 29th. So feel free to jump into this contest. Next up, let's take a quick look at the schedule. So yesterday we talked about what was new in ASP.NET, Ajax, and MVC. And let me remind you that all of these webinars will be posted on tv.telerik.com. I'm not sure if that one has been posted just yet, but I can tell you that the webinars that I am involved with, I try to post them within 24 hours, and most of the other evangelists do the same. So earlier today we had a What's New in Silverlight and WPF that I was a part of. I hope you joined that one and was able to see what we're doing in Silverlight and WPF. And of course you are already in the RadControls for WinForms webinar, which is going on right now. Tomorrow we have the Telerik Report Designer webinar and efficiency with our Visual Studio productivity tools. These tools include our Just Code, Just Trace, and a few others. Starting on Thursday, we have a webinar called Staying Afloat While Managing Multiple Websites and Personalization. And then in the evening, we have a Telerik UI Suite for Windows 8 is official in Q3 2012. So you may or may not be aware, we have released 2 betas, we've released a release candidate, but now we're actually official in Q3 2012. On Friday, we're going to wrap up with Test Studio 2012 R2 and TeamPulse R5. So feel free to check those out, and as I said earlier, if you can't make the webinars, then feel free to check them out on tv.telerik.com, but give it just about 24 hours. So let's take a look now at some of the brand new stuff. What's new and awesome? So I am pleased to announce that RadPivotGrid for WinForms has been released. So what is RadPivotGrid, you may be asking? So RadPivotGrid for WinForms ships as a beta in Q3 2012. So this is a control that provides functionality very similar to the functionality of pivot tables in Microsoft Excel. So it takes large chunks of data and summarizes it into a human readable way by the help of aggregates and field descriptors. So we'll see those in just a second when we get into our demo. The RadPivotGrid can also sort the data and show subtotals and grand totals at the end or at the beginning of the summarized data. It supports UI virtualization, so it can easily handle large data sets as well as dynamic data binding to popular controls such as RadChartView. You can also enable advanced printing options and tabular and compact layouts, which we'll see in a demo coming up. So with that, we'll go ahead and we will jump straight into a demo of PivotGrid, and we're only about 6 minutes in, so we are doing great on time. So let's take a look at the PivotGrid right now. So we're going to begin with File, New, and then Project. We're going to select the Telerik templates. We're going to select C# RadControls Windows Forms application, and I'm just going to give this the name of RadControl WinForms PivotGrid Q3, and then go ahead and press OK. The next screen that pops up is the project configuration wizard. I'm just going to place a check mark here on Telerik.WinControls.PivotGrid, and you'll see that the dependent references have automatically been added for us. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and hit the Finish button, and Visual Studio will begin spinning up. So if I scroll down just a little bit here, I'm going to just do a quick zoom in, and I'm going to show you that Telerik.WinControls, WinControls.ChartView, .PivotGrid.UI, and Telerik Common has been added to this project automatically for us. So I'm going to come back up to the top. I'll just close out of that, and I'll double click on my Form1.cs. So we're going to search our toolbox for RadPivotGrid, and once we do that, I'm going to select it, and I'm just going to drag and drop it onto my form here. So now that I did that, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the way this item is docked. So I'm going to go underneath docking, and I'm just going to center it, but I'm also going to search for a button as well, because we're going to show a printing demo in just a moment as well. So I'm just going to type in rad button, and I'll drag and drop that onto the same screen here, and we will select dock, and for this dock we're going to go ahead and select it at the very bottom. While we're in here, we'll just go ahead and scroll down just a tad, and we'll go to text, and we'll just name this print preview and hit OK. So I'll expand the form out just a little bit where we can see everything. So the very first thing that I'm going to do to this project is I'm going to come up to the top and I'm going to add some data to it. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to select add, and I'm going to go existing item, and I'm just going to scroll down just a little bit and go to my temp folder here, and I'm going to select all files, and I have an access database here that's already ready called salesdata.mdb. So I'm just going to double click that, and so the data source configuration wizard will launch. I'm going to select dataset, select next. I'm going to select all of the tables in that. We'll just leave the default name, and then we'll go ahead and we'll press finish. Now that we did that, we can click on the smart tag to our PivotGrid control, and we can go down to Open Property Builder. Once we select Open Property Builder, you'll see the RadPivotGrid Property Builder in your dialog screen. You can select data source. We're going to select other data sources, and we're just going to keep drilling down until we get to the actual sales data. So now that we are at sales data, we have the option that we can either turn on or off a couple of different features such as dragging and dropping, context, and sorting. We're going to leave all of these at their default and go ahead and click on fields. So now that we click on fields, we're going to select date here, then product, then promotion, and then net. From this screen, we are going to go down to our row labels, and underneath our row labels, we're going to drag and drop product and date to the column labels. So I'm just going to grab date and drag it over here to the column labels, as well as product. And we're also going to add in advertisement. So I'm going to place a check here in advertisement, and you can see it's been added here. So at this point, I could go ahead and I could select OK, and we could actually run our application now. So if we run our application, you can see Form 1 has been loaded and that we have data inside of it. And inside of this, we have our promotion, of course. We have sorting capabilities there, as well as Excel-like filtering. And then, of course, we have date and we have product. You can sort these as well if you would like to. You can break this down into just 2010 without showing the rest of these fields. And of course, if we just wanted to see the data, we could get down to one free with 10 in 2010 had 39,034. You will see we have a nice little tooltip that comes up there. It gives us a grand total. We can also see extra discount. It also has a grand total of these two sums. Well, we have a button that we haven't done anything with yet, and this is the print preview. So if your user would like to print this information, they can do so very easily. So let's go ahead and add in that functionality now. So we're just going to close out of the application, and we're going to double click on print preview. So I'm going to collapse the toolbox, and I'm going to expand our screen here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up our using statements. There's a couple of using statements that I know I want to use, and I'm just going to go ahead and add those in with this project. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and I'm going to add in 2 event handlers. And I will paste those in after the this.salesDataTable adapter. And I'll scroll over just a tad and I'll explain those. So you see we have 2 of them added here. We have a print element formatting and a print element paint. So the print element formatting is going to be used to do some validation on the cell, and in this example we're going to use it to color the background of the cells of different values with different colors. So let's go ahead and drop in the print element formatting method. So as you can see here, we're getting the cell, and then once we get the cell, we're doing a couple of checks on it. And if the value is less than 2000, then we're going to do a cell.backcolor and give it a color of red. If it's greater than 3000, then we're going to color it green. So we've added in the print element formatting. Now we need to add in our print element paint. So again, we'll just scroll down just a tad bit here, and I'll paste in that. So now that we've pasted in our print element paint event, we'll see that right off the bat, of course, it's just getting the current cell. It's checking to see if it's null, and then it's using a brush to fill the e.graphics.rectangle with that color. And in this instance, we're using a hatch style.backwards diagonal, a color with light gray that's also transparent. So this hatch brush has a couple of different overloads, and we're using a few of them here. So the final thing that we need to add in is going to be our Rad Button 1 click event. This, of course, is just going to be a very simple call to this.RadPivotGrid1.printPreview. So let's go ahead now and let's run our application again. Our application has been loaded. We can see our data here. Let's go ahead and let's select Print Preview. You can see it just generated 2 pages. So we zoom in just a little bit, and let's zoom in just a tad bit more, and we can see that anything that was less than 2000, it colored it red, and anything greater than 3000, it colored it green. So you can see from this demo here, and in this demo there's 2 pages. So we can scroll down to our second page as well. You can also do a couple of other things such as watermark and of course the print feature here. So this is just a quick demo of RadPivotGrid in WinForms Q3 2012. Okay, next up is enhancements to the whole suite. So there's a couple of things that I've listed here. The coded UI test support, new financial chart types for RadChartView, and then full Visual Studio 2012 compatibility. Let's go ahead and take a look at coded UI test support. With coded UI test support, I'm happy to inform you that as of our Q3 2012 release, we're going to introduce full support for coded UI test, implemented all 4 of the coded UI test levels. So these enhancements will be available not only in Visual Studio 2010, but in the brand new Visual Studio 2012 as well, which is what we've already been working in. So in addition to the SPY recognition, which is in level 1, now you'll be able to discover and evaluate RadControl specific properties, and also to record and playback test with the newly discovered elements, which is level 2. Moreover, in case your test is more complex and requires some additional coding, a specific set of the RadControls API will be at your availability, which is listed as level 3. Last but not least, we all want smarter tests that not just record mouse clicks with the set of points on the screen, but also understand what we're really trying to do. So this is going to be possible thanks to a set of intent-aware actions, which is level 4 that we implemented into the suite. There is a blog post by Microsoft that goes in details for these 4 levels, and I'm going to include a link to that in our resources at the end in case you want to dive a little bit deeper into what each of these levels actually are. We're going to show you a demo of this shortly, but just so you get more information, I'll have that link available in the resources. Next up is more chart types for RadChartView. So for this release, we developed 2 types of financial series, the Candlestick series and OHLC stick series. In addition to aid the raw stick data, we've added a bunch of financial indicators that will allow end users to easily visualize the trends exactly the way they want. We also want to improve the usability of RadChartView on touch devices. So you should be aware that the whole WinForms suite supports multi-touch gestures, and we've developed control-specific behaviors for many different scenarios. So in RadChartView, we've implemented zoom in, zoom out, scrolling, and rotation support. In large charts that contains a huge number of data points, it's sometimes very convenient to focus on a specific area, and this is where the zoom in, zoom out support takes place. We also support title and legends, and there is a brand new design time wizard which we will look at in our demo very shortly. The last thing that I wanted to mention here is we have full Visual Studio 2012 compatibility. So you probably already saw in our previous demo of RadPivotGrid we were using Visual Studio 2012. So one thing to note here is that all of the items in the toolbox, as we saw before, it's searchable. So we were able to search for RadPivotGrid. We could drag and drop. Also, the 2 new themes that comes with Visual Studio 2012, the dark theme and the light theme. You can use either one of those themes, and our controls and our design time wizards looks great in either one of them. So just keep in mind, if you are an early adopter, you can go ahead and upgrade to Visual Studio 2012 and know that our Telerik RadControls works just fine there. So with that, let's go ahead and let's take a look at a couple more demos. Let's take a look at RadChartView and Coded UI. So we're going to begin by going File, New, Project. I'm going to select the Telerik templates. We're going to select C# RadControls Windows Forms application. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to give this the name of RadControls WinForms ChartView Q3 and press OK. On the next screen here, this is the project configuration wizard. I'm just going to go ahead and place a check mark here in Telerik.WinControls.ChartView. and you may notice that it went ahead and added dependent references automatically for us. So after that, let's go ahead and hit the Finish button, and our project will begin spinning up. So if we look underneath the references, it's added a couple of references here for us already. It's added Telerik.WinControls, Telerik.WinControls.ChartView, WinControls.UI, and Telerik.Common. We can go back up to the top and we will collapse that branch and go ahead and double click on form1.cs. So we're just going to use the new feature in Visual Studio 2012 to search our toolbox. So I'm going to just type in RadChartView, and you'll see that that's under Data Controls 2012 Q3. And I'm just going to drag and drop that onto the form here. So once I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and fix this form up just a little bit where you'll be able to see it. So now that looks all nice and pretty. So let's go ahead and begin adding in our chart. So I'm going to select the Smart tag here, and I'm going to go all the way down to where it says Open Property Manager and select OK. So from here, you'll see our RadChartView property builder. And you can play through these if you wish to see which different types of charts that are available. As you can see, we're on a chart type right now. You can also select Polar and take a look at a couple of different chart types here, and then of course Pi. And we're going to go back to our Cartesian chart, and we'll just go ahead and we'll select this chart, and let's select the series. So we can begin here by giving legend title to our first line, series. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in legend title 1. So now that we have a legend title, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of value data points here real quick. So I'm going to begin with typing in a 1 here, giving this a category of second. I'll press return again, 3, and okay, so we've added a little bit of data here for our first spline series. Let's go ahead now and let's add in another spline series. So I'm just going to go ahead and go spline series, and we'll just name this legend title 2. And again, we're going to use the unbound mode, and we're going to add in some values here. Okay, so now we have some data points listed in here for our spline series 2. Let's go ahead while we're in here and let's click on Appearance, and we're just going to place a check mark on Show Grid. So when we place the check mark on Show Grid, it automatically selected a few of these for us. So we can draw vertical stripes, horizontal, vertical fills, alternating vertical color, and an alternating horizontal color. So let's go ahead now and let's click on Labels, and for our second series, we're just going to change the angle of this to maybe a 45, and we'll leave the rest of this at where it's at. And the last thing that we'll change here is we'll click on Interactivity, and we'll put a checkbox in Show Title, Show Legend. Of course, we could show pan and zoom. We're going to go ahead and add a check for Show Trackball, and then I'm just going to give this a couple of titles. We'll just use a generic chart title and a legend title where you'll be able to see something. And now that that's in place, we'll just go ahead and press the OK button. So from here in the designer, you can kind of see what our application is automatically going to look like. So we'll just go ahead and we're going to go debug, and we're going to go start without debugging. Our application has launched. You can see our chart here, and as we move over our second, our first, our third, and our fifth, of course you see the data points up there at the top. So this is just a quick sample of RadChartView in Q3 2012 RadControls for WinForms. So what I'd like to do now before we leave RadChartView is look at a quick 30-second video that shows some of the touch functionality with the new Q3 2012 RadChartView. So we're going to show rotating the chart as well as a quick zoom and scroll demo. Let's go ahead and get started. So here we are, we're inside of the Demos Apps Hub. We're going to click on Chart View, and we're going to rotate it. Now we're going to go ahead and rotate it back. We're going to go back into Chart View, Zoom and Scroll, and we're going to zoom into our graph, and we're going to scroll, and now we're going to zoom back out of our graph. So now let's go ahead and take a look at coded UI testing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring up a project that I've already created here. And this project, if we click on our Form 1, you'll see that we're using the RadGrid view here, and then we just have a button here called Filter. And if we look at the code behind for this page, it's very, very simple. We're basically initializing a data table. We're adding a couple of columns and rows to it. We're setting the data source to that table. We're turning on filtering, and then for each column we're going to set a column.width of 120. After that, for our filter button, we're going to use a filter descriptor to filter on property name value, and if it's greater than 40, then we're going to add that filter. So let's go ahead now and let's run the application. And if we run the application, you can see it in action. So we have our ID, we have our name, and we have our value. And if I go ahead and click the filter button here, you see we've filtered it to anything greater than 40. So we only have 2 items listed here. Let's go ahead and add a coded UI test to this project. So we're going to begin by going ahead and closing out of that screen. And I'm going to go ahead and go back up to my solution. I'm going to right click, I'm going to go add, I'm going to go new project, I'm going to select coded UI test project, which is under Visual C# test, coded UI test project, and we'll leave the default name, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to select OK. The next question that it's going to ask is, how do you want to create your coded UI test? Do you want to record actions, or do you want to use an existing action recording? So we're going to do everything from scratch, so I'm going to just select record actions and hit the OK button here. So once I hit OK, you can see the coded UI test builder starts. So it has started up here, and down here at the bottom there's a couple of different playback buttons. The first one starts recording, so it's going to record your mouse movements, and then we have another button here to add assertions. And then the last button here is actually going to generate the code for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Visual Studio, and our Windows Form application is still set as the default project. So I'm just going to go debug, and I'm going to go start without debugging. So our application is running now. So now I'm going to click on the button that says start recording. So now that I did that, the first button that I click on is going to be called filter. So I click on filter, and you can see the filter button has been recorded down at the bottom. I'm going to come up here into the contains, and I'm just going to type in SM and hit enter. So if you were able to watch that very quickly, it said SM and then it hit enter. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause the recording, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the generate code button. So I hit the generate code button. We're going to leave the default name here, and before I click add and generate, please make note that there's only this one item here that contained SM for the last name, which was John Smith. So now I click add and generate. It's generating code for us now, and we can come back over here to our project, and we can see this .uimap.recorded method 1 has been recorded for us. Let's go ahead and add an assertion. So I'm going to click on to add assertions button, and I'm going to drag it up, and you can see it found the form. Now it found the button. Now it found our grid view, and now it found the individual cell inside of our grid view. So I'm going to let go of the button here. I'm going to name. John Smith is what we're going to want to check for. I'm just going to simply right click, add assertion, and I'm going to use R equal, and we're just going to leave the default to John Smith, and then we're going to press OK. So now that that's in place, I'm going to simply go ahead and hit the generate code button, and again we'll leave the defaults here as well, and I'm going to select add and generate. So now that that's taken place, I can switch back over to Visual Studio, and if we scroll up just a tad bit here, you can see both the recorded method 1 and the assert method 1 have automatically been added for us. So before we try this, I'm just going to scroll up to telerik.wincontrols.codedui.2012, and I'm going to set copy local to true. So sometimes it doesn't copy over properly to the output directory, so I'm just going to make sure that it copies them. So I'm just going to switch this to a false to a true. Now at this point my application is open. I'm just going to go ahead and close out of it. It is still the default project, so I'm going to go back where we have a new instance of it, and I'm going to go start without debugging again, so we can see we have our 4 items listed here. So now over in the Test Explorer, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the button that says Run All. So when I click on Run All, you're going to see a lot of mouse movements happen very quickly. That's because Coded UI is running the methods and the assert method that we created. So I'm going to click on Run All. And if you just saw that, it clicked on the filter button and then it typed in SM to filter just by the last name of Smith. And now when this test finishes running, it will tell us whether or not it passed or not. And it passed, and you can see that it took about 3 seconds there. So this is just a quick example of coded UI testing and RadControls for WinForms Q3 2012. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap up with some resources. So the starting point for everything is Telerik.com. Next up is, if you are interested in checking out some of the documentation, some of the demos and features, then you would need to go to telerik.com/support.aspx. Next up is our Getting Started with RadControls for WinForms. Maybe you're brand new and you just want to, figure out, hey, I'm starting to use WinForms on a project. How can Telerik help me? This is the site that you will want to go to. So it is just telerik.com/products/winforms/getting-started.aspx. Next up is the Visual Style Builder for RadControls for WinForms. This is going to allow you to roll your own theme. A lot of people and a lot of our customers have requested this functionality. You can get this at telerik.com/product/winforms/visual-style-builder.aspx. And then finally, Coded UI Test Levels Explained. We talked about 4 different coded UI test levels. They are explained here. I'm not going to read out that full URL because it's kind of long, but the slides and the resources will be available on my blog shortly after. And now it is time for Q&A. So before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to remind you can download your free trial of RadControls for WinForms at www.telerik.com/WinForms. You can also stay engaged with me on email or through Twitter. At email, you can just email me at michael.crump@telerik.com or on Twitter at mbcrump. And I would also like to remind you that the recording of this video will be available on tv.telerik.com in about 24 hours. And if you give me just a few moments, then I'm going to adjust my mic and I'll take a live Q&A for our controls. Thank you very much for attending, and like I said, just give me just a moment.